everybody. Welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. I'm your host, Beth Pilgreen, and today we'll be discussing learning in the workplace, specifically continuous learning. We all understand that creating a learning culture within a company helps to grow the workforce, but investing in learning initiatives is also critical to the growth of the company itself. Here to talk more with us about all of that is today's guest, Oliver Bell, the CEO of Oliver Bell, Inc., a human resources and labor relations consultancy that is no stranger to the concept of continuous learning, offering on-site corporate training courses that cover a wide variety of topics. Oliver, we are glad that you could join us.
Well, thanks, Beth. I'm really happy to be here today, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, of course. So let's start with the basics. What is continuous learning?
The way I view continuous learning, as it's referred to in a business context, is it's that set of experience that you have from the time you enter an organization, the series of kind of formal training, the exposure you get, the onboarding, the training classes you need to know to become more familiar with the job, the way your company expects you to do it, the interaction that you get to have with people. And so that is one aspect of it. So I guess you'd say the difference between that lifelong and continuous learning is lifelong I consider to be outside of the workplace. Continuous learning I consider to be more specifically applicable to the workplace. But for lay people, they probably really overlap because they are so similar. It's just, one again has the workplace context, one has your everyday whole life context, if that's fair.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think continuous learning is important for employees? You've kind of already touched on that, but if you have any elaborations, I would love to hear it.
Sure. Well, I think when you use the term continuous learning,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of a workplace moniker.
Sure.
It's our idea of taking training and education that you had before you entered the workplace and continuing that, looking at the training and education you'll get after you enter the workplace and how you will apply it. It's the experience you gain daily. It's the hands-on opportunity to test theory. It's the ability to interact with others. It's the opportunity to ask questions. It's also gives you the experience and knowledge of knowing when to ask questions, because sometimes you can be more valuable to a person, to your organization, when you know when to ask a question. And then I guess you'd say also, finally, it's a chance to learn by observation. I think sometimes we underestimate how powerful learning by observation is.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
so learning by observation is part of that total continuous learning experience, so that you can, because by observation, you see things that you want to replicate because you believe they are proper and will help you accomplish your task. By the same token, you see other interactions in the workplace that you think you may not want to carry forward. So the observation capability lets you see things you would like to continue doing, things that when you get to a certain place, you say, I probably wouldn't do that because I think I can help the organization to success in other ways, and without including that type of behavior.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the different types of learning, whether it's formal, social, or self-directed learning.
Those three times: formal, social, self-directed. Obviously formal, your school type setting, your in-house training settings within a corporation, or even the advent of the online training centers. And I mean, I won't say the advent. Online is new. There have always been, for the longest time, there have been kind of computer-based or training programs that were self-directed. I'll go with that more of that self-directed, self-learning approach or self-paced approach. But I consider those to an extent to be formal programs if provided by the organization. I think that they allow you to look at key skill sets, how you would advance them, how you can monitor them, how you can assess them. There are various levels of cost. Obviously, in-person training, which I personally think is highly valuable and the best, costs more. Online training or computer-based training or just preset modular training, self-directed, lower cost, because really you're paying for the content. You're counting on the individual to their participation to create that learning experience for them. In terms of the social context, I think you have all types of interaction that go on. So, when people are interacting with each other, social really to me implies that whole learning by observation. And I think there may be a cultural aspect to that too, because while different types of different professional educators would probably say the way you learn best really depends on how your lesson plans are constructed. Lay people would probably tell you, well, I'm a visual learner, or I learn better by being off by myself and reading. The truth of the matter is, in terms of cognitive principles, there's a certain way to design a lesson plan that really has the highest probability of the information sticking. But that interactive experience, that social experience of the learning, can help the person maybe be a little bit more enthusiastic or less enthusiastic about the learning, if that's fair.
Yeah, and that makes total sense to me because I feed off of people in a group more so than just being a self-starter. And the self-directed learning probably wouldn't be as effective for me.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, in your experience, do companies have to create their own training programs from scratch, like maybe with the clients that you've worked with, or what?
Um, you know, that's interesting. I really don't think that companies have to create training from scratch. There is so much content on the market now. I mean, over time, we have just gotten so good. We know so much. There's a lot of content. I think so. There are things that people probably can buy off so to speak, buy off the shelf or have prepackaged learning. But I think what a lot of organizations are looking for, not so much training that is specifically custom tailored for them, but to take existing content and tweak it or tailor it so that it fits their
Hmm.
need. There's and that way you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel every time that you try to create a training, because really, if you listen to professional educators, one of the big thing is actually learning and training design. And so, and I'm kind of stuck in that mode right now. I'm a big believer in delivery, but I also know that you have to have the right infrastructure for training,
Sure.
so that if you design your lesson plans the right way, and there is a whole thing that goes into learning analysis, task analysis, um, the best way to deliver a course, how you're going to test for knowledge, how you're going to allow people to go out and try to apply that knowledge post training, and then the feedback loop that you're going to establish to see, to test the overall validity. Because learning, like anything else, it's not a destination; it's a
Hmm.
journey. So things change over time, and I firmly believe that over time we do have to adjust these different training things we have, whether it's because a change in technology, sometimes it's a change in staff, it's a change in emphasis of the
Hmm.
organization. The organization evolves, the organization has different needs. It may not want to train things now that it trained in the past.
Sure. And personally, I'm just curious, do you prefer more of the design element or the actual training element? Or both?
Me personally, well, here's the thing. I think the learning design itself is kind of foundational. But that goes to the fact that there's so much content out there. A lot of content is similar. If you go out and you find someone doing, I'll say, a leadership course, for example, and they're going to talk to you about the 10 good
Hmm.
habits of a leader, I would probably suggest to you that 80% of the people doing that, or the majority of the people providing that kind of training, 80% of their content overlaps, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
And so the big part, so where you move away from the key design elements to the delivery element, is that there's an experience that also goes on with delivery. A lot of times a person who just delivers well can make something that seems otherwise not fun be a more enjoyable experience. So the idea of having the right content but delivering it well, it takes your training experience or your education experience to another level. And quite honestly, from that social learning aspect, we have to admit a lot of people want to be, if we're not going to use the word entertain, let's at least use the word
Yeah.
engaged. They want to feel like they're part of that session, like they've been pulled in, like they're living it while they're there. And they want to feel like they're going to get a takeaway that they can use as soon as they walk out. So if you have this training that is well designed, that is delivered to in a way that, for whatever your group is, encourages some excitement or energy post session, and they're walking out with one or two things that they're going to go do immediately to change what they're doing in the workplace, that is probably, a relatively successful formula for your design of your training, your delivery of your training, and whether or not it provides any benefits afterwards. Because don't train just for the sake of training. Train because you're going to get a result. You're going to make people better. You're going to make your work climate better. You're going to make your organization better.
Yeah. We're going to take a break to recognize our sponsor, and then we'll be right back to continue with our conversation. Thanks for listening. Also, thanks to A Better Leader for supporting this week's episode of Project HR. A Better Leader is leadership training that brings your leaders into alignment. A Better Leader's online platform improves engagement and morale and directly affects your bottom line. Get your free 2-week trial at abetterleader.com. We're back, everybody. Oliver, do you think that continuous learning is strictly for non-management employees, or should leaders also take part in this?
Oh, you've hit a sweet spot of what I love to talk about.
Oh, great.
Emphatically, continuous learning is for all, and I would say especially leaders. There's workplace terminology I don't always agree with, but we'll use some of it. When you're an individual contributor, you have a certain set of skills required to do your job. If you're part of a team, you may pick up some additional skills that are required to do your job. As a leader and a person moving on to advanced positions, you've got other skills that in order to be successful, you're going to have to morph or change and adapt those skills. So for example, I think a leader's most challenging skill is the ability to communicate.
Oh, I can see that.
And I appreciate that. And I would tell you that for leaders, I say communication is a hard skill. You've probably heard this terminology in the workplace, hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills tend to be, we'll call it technical things. Soft skills, people will want to say are relationship related. Well, if you're a frontline person and your job is to kind of turn a wrench for your job, then maybe communication is a soft skill for you, and turning the wrench, because we absolutely need that wrench turned, is the hard skill. But as you move into leadership, you're less needed as a wrench turner and more needed as a person who creates the environment where wrenches can be turned effectively, safely, with little distraction. And quite honestly, when I remember a time when I was in the Army, when I was a young lieutenant, my boss came to me and he said, "Lieutenant, what's your primary job?" And I looked around at all this fabulous military equipment I had and all the things that we could do with that and what we could accomplish. And he held up his finger and looked me in the eye and he said, "Your radio." He says, "Because if you can't communicate, you're not in charge. Your job is to be in charge." So I would submit that to all leaders out there. Your job is to be in charge. If you can't communicate, you're not in charge. You're not able to do job one in your role. I mean, we know that it's great for a leader to make a cameo appearance and, so to speak, turn a wrench so that everybody knows that you really know that too, and they can trust you to make decisions for them. But your job is to make sure that people understand what you're trying to get accomplished, that they feel engaged, that they feel you care, and that they know essentially that you've got their back and are supporting them. So for as far as continuous learning goes, yes, for everyone, especially for leaders, and especially in communications, I would say.
Okay, so communication is obviously an emphasis in this training that we're talking about. What would you say to the manager who that's not their strong suit? How can they get better in that area?
Well, what I have found over time is that you do have some folks that have, communicating, as you point out, can be a challenge for them. But what I've seen in leadership is people who, especially if they have a strong technical background, they have learned how to apply themselves to be better technically. Generally speaking, if they take that same effort and attitude and apply it towards communication skills, I find that they really can improve their communication skills. And generally, sometimes they need a little coaching. So it's great for them to have someone they can get feedback with. But if they do a communications class, if they focus in on it, if they go try to exercise those skills, they can do it. What I have found more challenging is the reverse. Taking someone who is actually, you might say, a really good communicator, but less technically proficient, and trying to make them a technical guru. I find that people fail more trying to make that transition than trying to go from a technical person who's a better communicator. So again, I think if we take the instruction or the training opportunities, the interactions, if we provide feedback, if we coach people on that, they will get better because they've shown that they can do that. It's a simple way of putting it.
Okay. So it's a learned skill. Anybody can learn to be a better communicator.
I think so. I think that's absolutely true.
You know what? That's probably giving people hope in business and also personally who are listening to this.
I'll tell you something that kind of goes in line with that is there's all these issues around the different generations in the workplace right now. We have 7 generations in the workplace from 17 to 70, so to speak, right? And everybody has different communication needs. They've grown up different culturally. There's some people you could be more direct with. Some people you might use a few more euphemisms. But one thing everybody likes, regardless of their age, regardless of their gender, regardless of their cultural background, they like straight talk, especially on items that are critical to them. They don't want people pulling punches. They want you to, give it to them so that they can understand it, so they know how to respond to it, so they know how to act with it. I think that would apply to training as well. If they need to be trained in something that's critical for them to be able to do their job, they want you to take it and give it to them the best way possible, the most efficient way possible, so they can get in, get out, learn what they need to learn, and go execute it so that they're contributing to the organization. Because most people want their employers to do well, and they hope that in return, when their employer does well, they also get to reap the benefits of the employer doing well. So I think that's good.
Sure, of course. And I think too, with the straight talk that you're talking about in communication and also in training, that's going to make people feel more security in their role because the expectations are laid out and everybody knows what's going to happen here. And same with communication. I think that people feel more secure when they know your expectations of them.
Sure, and I think that's great culturally. Whether you're talking about training, whether you're talking about accomplishing your work tasks, whether you're talking about safety, whether you're talking about generating revenue, that whole clarity, it's taking care of people, making sure they understand, and all of that also, all those things are observed by folks. And whether that's their formal learning or, as we mentioned earlier, their social learning, they're learning about the organization. They're learning why they want to be there, why they want to continue to be there, and why it's a good place for them to work. So all of those things, you might say, are additive, or accumulative to the overall work experience. So training is a piece of that, and if you can deliver on that, it helps retain people.
Yeah, absolutely. Clarity is gold, isn't it? In all realms.
Yes.
Everybody loves clarity. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. Today's guest is Oliver Bell with Oliver Bell Inc., and our topic is continuous learning. Okay, Oliver, I'd love to talk more about what you offer with your company. So as we discussed at the top of the show, Oliver Bell Inc. offers a number of learning programs. Would you mind telling us about some of them?
Yes, it's kind of funny. Sometimes we have a saying on the farm: "It's a poor dog won't wag his own tail." I don't want to brag too much about trainings, because we could go on ad infinitum about specific kinds of classes and whatnot. What I'd rather kind of mention is to say that it's more of a holistic environment in terms of the way we try to approach it. So we believe in trying to address activities that are going to improve your workforce overall. And often our programs are designed really for leaders and employees to make sure that everyone in the organization can understand that whole workplace culture you're trying to have there. I think leadership skills are an important area that we train in terms of communication, engagement, managing diversity and inclusion, the role of a supervisor. Those are our focal points topically, and we actually have classes or training sessions with those types of titles. By the same token, we also work with employees in similar areas so they know how to communicate, share information, provide feedback to leadership, show respect for their coworkers, et cetera, so that as we complete the loop, the entire workplace culture can really be engaged. And so, again, wasn't trying to do that topic by topic, but I will give you this one statistic that's relevant in all this training. According to the Conference Board, 90% of employees are engaged when you hire them. 6 months later, about 35% of the same group is truly engaged. So that gives you a couple of stats.
35%, you said?
Yes.
Whoa.
So first of all, if 90% are engaged when you hire them, you already might have a 10% error, right? So we make some honest mistakes. But why do people become less engaged over time? Well, first, think about this. The person you hire, one of the things they're trying to do after you hire them, they're trying to show how smart you are for hiring them. So they have all kinds of ideas and suggestions and things they want to throw at you. And sometimes we in leadership can almost act like the parent of a 2-year-old, where our favorite word is no. Because 2-year-olds touch everything and we're trying to make sure they're safe. And we're going, no, no, no,
Yeah,
no,
don't
no.
do that.
And you find yourself sometimes saying no to people when, if they're providing you feedback, the first thing you could really do is say, thank you. Let me think about that. So think about this. If 35% of your workforce is engaged now, right, because they've fallen off, and you're making your numbers, you're productive. Wow. Just think what you could do if only 50% of your workforce was engaged,
Yeah.
right? So the idea of providing this good training, which what the things that we try to look at that can push, overall employee engagement above 50% into the 60s, into the 70s, ideally back to 90, companies would be performing off the charts. Employees would be effective. They'd be getting their jobs done in the time allocated. They could spend less time at work, more time with family and friends. Their quality of work and personal life would improve greatly just because we spent some time with them. And the most valuable resource that we have, and this is part of our kind of training mentality. The most valuable resource you have, or the one resource you have that once you give it away, you can never get back, is time.
Right.
So if I spend time with you, to me, that's me telling you that you are really important to me, because I am giving you a resource that I can never get back. So if you're important enough for me to spend the unrenewable resource on you, you are important to me. And I think that's a matter of all relationships, whether it's workplace or personal. And so, on a final note, that kind of ties back into when we talk about that whole that workplace. We talk about leadership. We talk about diversity and inclusion a lot. But when I talk about diversity and inclusion, I just go /leadership, because that's what it really is. We look at leadership and workplace culture, as they impact training. We ask people, we don't really ask people to focus on diversity and inclusion for the sake of focusing on it. We ask them to focus on that because it makes you a better organization overall. And as we seek, I think leadership wants to improve their workplace culture. That employees want to feel that they work in a place that accepts them and allows them to excel. And I think that the training programs that we try to emphasize and put together for our clients really try to take advantage of that. So that's what we do. Those are a few topics touched on. What I'd like to say to folks, rather than going down a laundry list of training class, sure, is that the objective of our training is, so to speak, to help you be bigger, better, faster, sooner, in a positive way, where we can take advantage of all the good things going on in your organization and try to minimize the negative things going on in your organization, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, how can our listeners learn more about Oliver Bell Inc. and your training programs?
Our website is www.oliverbell.com. Our office number in Texas, 281-593-1690. And I would tell folks, our strength is tailoring information or content to meet their needs. One thing I always like to tell our staff, and I say, one of the things I do best, I said, I can take other people's stuff and make it sound better than they can make it sound. So, the ability to enhance that experience for people, I think, is key. So we love to work with any organization that feels it wants a workforce that is going to be more engaged, more productive, more effective. And they want to have an inclusive workplace and maximize workplace relationships. So if that's what you're trying to do, then, Oliver Bell Inc. at oliverbell.com is probably a group that you should consider. We would be happy and honored to be considered by folks. And given the opportunity, we'd love to serve. I'm an old Army guy who likes to serve people. I did it, in the military. We do some public service things currently right now with some public service boards we sit on, and we love to serve our clients the same way.
That's wonderful. And you should know that I just noticed that I am physically smiling while you're talking. And I think it's because I can tell that you are so passionate about this and so good at what you do. I'm excited. I hope that people contact you from listening to this.
Well, I would say this, Beth, you are too kind. We really appreciate it. Thanks to you and to Projections for including us in this opportunity. I think it's a good thing that you're doing. And to the extent that, that we can help anyone out there, we would love for them to consider us. We would love the opportunity to help them, and we won't let them down.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all. And I'm pretty sure that this episode of Project HR counts as continuous learning for all of our listeners, definitely for me. So thank you for that. But our conversation isn't over yet. Not until you answer our lightning round questions. Are you ready for those?
Oh my goodness. You know what? Go ahead. Is this the lightning round ambush? Go ahead. Let's see what we can do.
Yes, let's go for the ambush. Okay, topic showdown. When it comes to continuous learning, do you consider yourself to be old school or new school?
How about this? I'm old school because I think that it's always been there. If you didn't advocate it before, you weren't successful. So it's always been there, maybe under another name.
And another design.
There you go.
What's the worst job interview question you've ever been asked?
I once was with a small organization, and as I was sitting in the interview, they kind of conveyed that they didn't really know what the job was. So the question they asked was I able to design my own job description?
What? Was this recent?
No, this wasn't recent. This was a while back.
That's funny. What's your favorite thing about working in corporate learning?
I personally, and I know a lot of our staff does this as well, we love it when we're standing in front of a group of people and all of a sudden you could recognize in that group of people that the light has come on, that they get what you're talking about, and you see the spark, right? And that is so cool, right? And that's what our team loves about training. That's what I love about it. That's what our staff loves about it, is when you see that little spark come on, you can go, when we leave here, this place is going to be a little bit better than they were when we got here. And if they're a little bit better than they were when we got here, because we were here, then we've done our job.
Yeah. Yep. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice I've ever been given, be able to laugh at yourself.
That's great. Can't take yourself too seriously. Okay, who or what inspires you?
My family inspires me. I have 2 daughters that are just exceptional. Matter of fact, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that's all the girls in my life. So my 2 daughters plus my wife.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Oliver, on this week's episode of Project HR.
Sure thing. I appreciate the time, appreciate being here. Good luck to you guys as you continue with this wonderful project.
And thanks too to our listeners, of course. Don't forget to grab the companion for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. As always, in it, you'll find notes, links, resources, and more to what Oliver and I discussed. Also, if you'd like to be on Project HR or know someone who would, feel free to email us at projecthr@projectionsinc.com. Finally, we'd love for you to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your content. Your ratings help more people to find us online, so thanks for helping us grow. Reviews count too, so we encourage you to share your thoughts. Well, that's it for me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.